All right. Hello and welcome to the Torch Snuffers podcast. I'm your host, Alicia, and with me to discuss episodes kind of two and definitely three of Survivor David versus Goliath are my fabulous panelists, which are Alex Cash,
Ah,
Ben Mealy,
Hi, friends.
and Stephen Lehman.
Hello, Alicia. Just want to let you know that your skin looks flawless, by the way, darling.
Thank you, Natalie. Oh, I mean, for the one nice thing we have heard come out of her mouth this entire show. So we are definitely going to get there. It's been an explosive episode. It's been an interesting episode. It's been an episode marred by a lot of things that I would say are kind of Survivor 101. You don't do that, but people are doing that. And here we are. Um, One of the first things that was happening a lot in episode two, but also happens in episode three, is we see the Mason Dixon alliance that Nick has decided needs a name, along with like all of his other alliances that also need a name. And I'm just waiting for him to call one alliance by another alliance name. Like Survivor 101, you don't like make alliances with every human being on Earth. You just
Yeah.
don't do that. But here we are. And we have Mason Dixon that is taking credit for the blind side of Jessica in episode two. Yeah, so we have that going on. That's how the episode begins. And then we're quickly left with kind of a common theme this season, which has excited us so much, is that we're getting to see a lot of characters develop. We're seeing a lot of everyone, which is awesome. So we have Carl that is crying and talking about how hard it is to be away from his family. It's like day four. I don't know about you guys. Are you going to be that emotional being on Survivor after like a long weekend's worth of time there?
um, I would say no now, and I would absolutely be when I got there. That's just how
Um, I would readily admit that, like, by day probably like 2 or 3 of being on the island, I'd probably be in hysterics and being like, I don't know any of these people. Like, I have no support system. This
Stranger
is terrible.
danger!
Yeah, stranger danger, essentially.
The one thing I will give everyone on this season is how I can't really think of any other season that has had like a cyclone or a typhoon that they've had to endure in the first 3 days. So I'll give them that. Like their mental capacity may be like shot from the start because of how the weather ended up treating them.
Okay, fair. I
That
feel like
being said, I would probably use the weather as an excuse when I'm crying on the second half of the first day, asking for me to have my family. So they've made it more than like, good job, Carl. Your tears made it until day four.
okay, very fair. I think if I was sitting on a beach with very like a bamboo shelter and during a hurricane, I would also not be so hot. So that is fair. Thank you for checking me on that then.
Also, they don't have their cell phones. So, like, we don't know that reality. Like,
True.
there's no cell signal there.
Yeah, it must be tough. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I guess that you do have a lot of time on the island if you're not on your phone to like think about yourself and be introspective and realize like what it is to be a man. Kind of like John is doing. He's getting to like step away from his character that he plays in the wrestling circuit. I don't
Johnny
know.
Impact.
Yeah, and he gets to be just him, like just himself, which is really refreshing and cool to see. We have these really badass people this season, John, and then also B, an MMA fighter, who are getting to see like in a more vulnerable place than they normally are. And so it's cool to get to see that. I know we have both John and B fans on our panel.
Well, I'll toot John's horn at any opportunity. Also, we're competing against him right now because he's on a wrestling pay-per-view right now, which is cute. But I think that he's really gonna be like that hidden gem that people like really radiate towards after making such a broad presumption based off of, hey, this is the muscly like wrestling dude, and we're like in episodes 2 and 3 now where you're seeing him be so introspective, have a lot of insight into who he is. And the thing that strikes me the most, and they've now hit at this for multiple episodes, they're making a point of detailing John as the one that's going to bat for Natalie with at all possible. Like with episode 2 and episode 3, he's the one that's like, if I like out of like for whatever reason, they're highlighting that he wants to really work with Natalie for some reason. And now that we know what we know at the end of the third episode, she's made it to the swap. She's made it to the point where she has dynamics to play with rather than it being like catch or get catched the first couple of tribals. So I don't know. I think that John is being highlighted in a very positive light and having some like low key stuff like the stuff with Natalie to make me think he's going to be a really sustainable, good character this season, even with my bias put aside.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think John is a fan favorite for a lot of reasons, even for people like me that don't know him at all from like the next guy, but I really am enjoying seeing him as a human out on the tribe. So we'll see. And you're right, it's so interesting that they are highlighting the Natalie connection. Although with Natalie, I wouldn't be surprised if she somehow gets like goaded all the way to the end because like in no universe does she win this game by getting votes from the jury. So I don't know. It could be a smart move to bring like a huge kind of meat shield with you along the way to gather all the attention. Although, you know, Natalie would not see herself as a meat shield because her strategy is to get along with everybody for season 2, and she seems to think she's doing that. As I'm sure, like this last unanimous vote to keep her solidified in her mind. um, but yeah, which is a kind of another one of these Survivor 101 things is like everyone knows you don't cause drama during the shelter building because that's what gets so many people bit. And yet she, in her infinite wisdom of ordering people around at the shelter, managed to avoid that. So her I don't know, one of her counterparts, I guess, for lack of a better word, Jeremy was not so lucky. He had the misfortune of being that Survivor 101 failure that held a tribe meeting, which never goes well, ever.
Like,
ever.
I really wish that they would like let me know ahead of time, like Survivor lets me know which episodes have tribal meetings, like ones that are scheduled by the players, so I can make sure to see those episodes live because they're always the one that provide the most entertainment because they're the most brain dead stupid.
Yeah, and what's surprising is Jeremy's a smart guy. Like he's a lawyer, like he's well spoken, and he purports to be like a fan of this show, and so you would think he of all people would not do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe his background as a lawyer, I don't know what type of law he practices, but maybe he's used to like convincing people of things. Well, I don't know. I also don't know what Angelina does, but it seems like she was even better at convincing people of things.
Well,
because she whipped the boat.
Score.
She does, as she says, she uses her powers of persuasion to, you know, get discounts at restaurants or like when stopped by a police officer. By the way, the tribe meeting that Jeremy held did not it was not at all unfamiliar to me. It reminded me a bit of Nicaragua when Holly like called the tribe and was like, "Hey Dan, you know your $1,600 alligator shoes? I dumped them in the river," and like was just like, "Okay, bye." Um, but with Angelina, she is like an engineer of sorts, I think, or something like that. She does
Yes.
something impressive. Like she's
She does
smart.
something that qualifies her as a shelter builder. That's what I
Yeah.
remember.
Oh, okay, fair. I don't know, but Stephen, you were telling us some interesting rumors that have come about with
So,
Angelina. Please illuminate our lovely audience.
allegedly, this is from Jeremy's exit interview. He said something to the effect of Angelina targeting him because I suppose Jeremy made jokes about John and Angelina being in a showmance, a one-sided one at that. I guess he said that Angelina was into John, but not vice versa. But Angelina was like he can't even joke about that. Like there can't be any ammo for that on TV, otherwise it'll throw my relationship into like jeopardy. Because I believe Angelina's newlywed. Um, so allegedly, according to Jeremy, Angelina then went to everyone and was like, "Hey, he's gonna screw up my marriage. Like we got to get rid of this guy now." And she ordered everyone on the tribe not to talk about it in front of the cameras, so there wouldn't be any like footage or ammo of it. So, do I believe him? I don't know, but it's an incredibly like riveting story nonetheless.
Interesting. In this case, one of those things where we don't even see the possible like reason behind everything, and we just, I don't know. I mean, if that's true, he definitely was digging himself a grave because like who does a tribe meeting and has that happening with him and is like riveting around in people's stuff to find the idol. I found it very interesting that Mike, even though he was close with Jeremy, was like, and he will do anything it takes to win. So I've gotta check myself with that. And so, um,
I sorry.
yeah,
The
it was a
one
good read.
it was
I think by Mike.
I love the one thing I remember very vividly from this episode is Mike giving a confessional, like at the start, like talking about the pros and cons of Jeremy. And he said something to the lines of, he's like my favorite person because he makes me laugh. He's hilarious and he bosses me around all the time. And I'm like, that's all I like. That's literally my dating profile. It's like, literally, you are my spirit animal right now.
That was face to face. That was like we saw Mike's mouth move through that whole thing. So that was not a Franken speech quote. He said that for real.
Yeah, it was great.
So yeah, with regards to Jeremy, two things I want to say. One, with regard to what he said in his interviews with the whole Angelina thing, he's a lawyer. I want to see what I want to know what evidence he has because that sounds like he sounds very certain about something that he never saw. like the entire point was that he was suspicious because he did not get a single word that he was a target, and so he thought that it was being hush hush because of that. So you know, is it very entertaining? Yes. Do we have any idea if it's true? No. And second, with regard to the whole thing about he's a lawyer and all that, just whenever we're talking about survivor professions, always remember Jatia was a nuclear engineer.
True. Very true.
Queen.
I will say, on being a lawyer, someone on a podcast that I listen to pretty regularly, Undisclosed, was talking about the profession of law and how it basically was, when you're in court, if you if you don't have if the evidence isn't on your side, you go with the law. If the law isn't on your side, you go with the evidence. But if the law and the evidence aren't on your side, you pound on the table and yell like hell. So perhaps this is Jeremy just like yelling to the rooftops this crazy story, justifying why he was voted out. Like, who knows? I'm sure more will come to light in, future comments about the season.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that this is going to like all the Goliaths now need to be prepared to like answer that question. Like, so Jeremy said X, Y, and Z. What's your response? And they're all gonna have to like field a written statement to it or something.
Yeah, they'll all have to be on the same
Subpoenaed
page.
from their time on the island.
Get it into the written record. I want a whole case file.
Yeah. I don't know, but yeah. But again, we're seeing these characters with so much, I guess, depth. We're seeing Jeremy the lawyer, we're seeing Jeremy like the really hard player, and we saw Jeremy the son who loves his father who has Alzheimer's. And we got to see a really touching moment of him reflecting on how his father, raised him and the life he's living because of that. And so that was a really sweet, thing to get to see before he was ultimately voted out. And a very explosive and interesting tribal council where there was a lot of yelling and a lot of strange comments. Like talking, for example, about Jeremy and Natalie's funerals and who would attend them. Guys,
Yeah,
was that one of the most insane things you've ever seen in a drama?
Yeah, and one thing that I want to talk about from before that is that it just seemed like the argument had just roved all around camp. Like it showed up at the campfire, and then they moved over to where the flag was. And then Jeremy goes to talk strategy down by the beach, and Natalie's like, "Hey, I want to talk with everybody but Jeremy. Jeremy, please get up and leave." And then it's like having a fight in every room of the house.
Yeah.
And then they go outside, and it's still happening.
They have like, do they have like a checklist of all the locations they have to fight? Like, oh, we gotta fight by the flag. Then we gotta fight
Oh
in the
my God, they were
shelter.
missing like by the water cooler, but I guess they would never go and get water together because
Oh my God.
that would show that they were aligned or something. Yeah, it was that part of the episode I didn't like as much just because it was so constant and like in this overbearing fight. And I, unlike some of my panelists, don't actually like Natalie. It was a lot. Certain members of this panel adore her. And I just don't get it. What am I missing, guys? Because I just appreciate like bossy, rude woman.
You're very clearly missing a bossy, independent woman that you could enjoy in your life. That's what you're missing. You're missing the whole
I'm
point.
the bossy, independent woman in my life, and that's why I don't like her because we're similar.
That might be it. We may have found out the reason.
Yeah, is there like a mirror?
I think for myself personally with Natalie, I feel like as a character we have gotten everything we have expected to get from her, and yet I'm still okay with it because like I will readily admit she's not like I don't enjoy her for her like strategic chops or social prowess. I enjoy her for the fact that she has the social grace of a Mack truck, and like she's about as subtle as one as well. And I think that's like for me what I enjoy about her is that she's like surviving like very much in spite of the ungodly amount of things that should be sending her home. So that's why I enjoy her as a character. I readily admit that like an Abby, Maria, or like a Philip, that she would probably be unbearable to live with. But as someone who is watching her on my television, I go Natalie, go.
I just really love that she's like cockroaching around, like Everything is stacked up against her, and yet here she is walking through night 9 with the fire still in her hands.
Yeah, I was gonna
Somehow.
say she has no business still being here after one tribal, and yet I'm so
Let's
excited that
just
she
be
is.
honest about it. Just like, let's be real, let's break it down. The 57-year-old woman who is abrasive is on the Goliath tribe
Yeah,
in the game of Survivor, and she was not the first person voted
yeah.
off of that tribe.
And
Like,
I think
cockroach.
And it also wasn't because her
we're-
personality saved her.
I think we're putting too much emphasis on her ability to cockroach, because I mean, like, she had me at, I have people who will literally take a bullet for me. Like, just like, who says that? Where did they find her?
Natalie Cole does.
She's totally in the mafia.
She is living in her own universe, and I kind of want to see where it is. Just like how do I get there? How do I have that level of self-confidence?
I don't know.
Having impeccable skin, apparently. That's how you get access. That's your level of standard.
No, because that didn't save Jeremy from his doom. Love her some Jeremy skin, as we saw in the voting confessional. It was so strange. But God bless. But yeah, so that is the Goliath tribe in a nutshell. They voted as one, and so as Jeff kind of alluded to, that means you still don't know. It could be anyone for the next tribal because there's been no solid lines in the sand as far as who's voting with who yet. But now that doesn't matter because they're tribe swapping next episode. And we'll step away from the Goliath tribe now to chat about the Davids, who won their very first challenge that wasn't like the initial reward challenge on the boat. So that's exciting. Um, And I don't know, I thought they did really well at the challenge itself, obviously, because they won. But I thought even like the rope untying, it seemed like the people doing it were way more in sync than the Goliaths. Like they seemed to have better teamwork. And it feels like, I don't know about you guys, but like if I'm gonna do a puzzle, I want to do a puzzle with someone who I trust and like to do the puzzle with me, who I can like feel like I can rely on, which I think Christian and Gabby very much have that relationship, whereas Natalie and Allison do not.
I want to be doing it with the person that knows algorithms. That's my qualification. I want the person that can do a slide puzzle in 6 seconds. That's my choice of partner.
Same. Slide puzzles are so impossible. I just don't get them. I don't
I
understand it.
taught myself how to do them just because of Survivor.
Very cool. I tried teaching myself and it just didn't take. So, oh well. I'll have to find another way that doesn't involve slide puzzles or balance, which I also don't have. What could possibly go wrong?
Alicia shows up to a balance challenge, and Probst is like, "Alicia, first out."
I'm like, yes, true. I've been working on it lately, but it's okay. I don't know, but maybe I could get lucky and have a player like B, who would normally be awesome at it, hurt her knee again, and then I could sneak by unnoticed.
Or
Because we
be in her knee.
I know.
Some would say that that's not the bee's knees.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, throw me into a wood chipper.
I've heard that joke so many times. I just wanted to put it out there again. So
Thank you for blessing us, Steven.
I feel so bad for B, all like joking aside. Like she is mincemeat come swap. Like, let's be real, she has a bum knee and on a new tribe. And that's a really easy excuse to use for a first vote.
That is very true.
And she's already on the minority of
Although
the
that
tribe she
kind of
was
person
on.
is definitely the one I want to be competing against at like a final tribal situation or like a final competition situation. So you got to think that way too. And I think with a swap coming, they'll probably start thinking about individual game a little bit more than they had been if they hadn't already been.
I hope they
which
had.
doesn't allow, according to Jeremy at his tribe meeting.
I really wish that he was able to implement a check-in, check-out system with his tribe, complete with like check-in board with like going to the water well and off fishing and going to tree mail, because apparently you need to account for your behavior and be micromanaged on like
I know.
the game of Survivor.
Let alone all of the times you're being pulled to like film confessionals by the crew, which I'm
Right.
sure is also like stress-inducing to like constantly have people like going away and being like, "What's happening? Where are you guys?" I don't know. But we shall see. We have one couple that is ignoring the don't have a showmance rule, Kara and Dan, despite acknowledging that it's a terrible idea and just being like, fuck it, and doing it anyway. So we'll see if that causes their demise. It's kind of it's being alluded to, of course, kind of every episode. I think I don't remember who brought it up this time that like they wanted to break up that showmance eventually. Maybe Jeremy, who knows. But we'll see. It's been a fun backwards ride so far. But here we are, here Natalie is in all of her glory. Moving forward to next week, where we have a tribe swap and Christian promises to bring the charmpocalypse by charming everyone on his tribe. I am extremely excited to see how that goes, if it goes anywhere at all. But it should be fun. It should be another fabulous episode. I know, Steven, you had said previously that this season is better than we deserve right now, but I feel like we do deserve this because as Survivor fans, we miss
Yeah,
a lot sometimes, and this season is everything we wanted and needed, and I love
that's
it.
true.
Yeah, so kudos to the Survivor team for putting together what has thus far been an excellent season. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week to talk all about episode 4. So, yeah, bye.
Bye.